stars are in light, the weeper, we would know. I've been told that the fire's old, and when stars are in light, the weeper, we would know. As a sliver of your mind, as a sliver of your mind, of your mind. In the end, the call. In the end, in the end, in the end, the call. In the end, your shining hands in mine. Some things are meant to be. In the end, the call. In the end, the call. Stick the Stick the
Hey everyone, welcome to the Improving Sales Performance livecast. We are so excited that you're here. I am thrilled. I'm honored. I am proud to be joined by two of the OGs of CSS, Jim Hopes and John Henley, both managing partners here at the Center for Sales Strategy. And last time the three of us did one of these live casts, which is about a year ago, it was a lot of fun. And so we thought we'd bring it back and do it again. And it's on a similar topic. Last year we got together and we talked about the media sales report. It had just come out and we wanted to take some time and dissect it and share our thoughts about not only what we saw in the media sales report, but also just what's going on right now in media sales and maybe share a perspective or two. So let me remind everyone that this is the media sales report. You can look at it right there. That's a pretty good view and you can download it. I know Shay can put up the link to that, which is css.buzz/media sales report. And that is all in lowercase. So you want to make sure you have it all in lowercase when you go and get it. And it's loaded with great information. As a reminder, we did this survey back in October of this year, so it's very, very current. We had over 250 salespeople and sales managers respond in that time period. Came from radio, TV, cable, digital, newspaper, outdoor, anyone that's selling advertising, anyone that's out there selling the media space. Came from all different sorts of market sizes. We had just as many come from top markets and medium markets and large and mega and small. So there's a good cross section of that. The one interesting thing that what we saw in this is that the largest group of people, whether sellers or managers, the largest group of people to respond to the survey were veterans, people with 11 plus years. So this isn't, this might not be that reflective of a rookie salesperson or a brand new salesman, someone that's only been in it a month or a year or less than a year. This is really reflective of veterans, people that have been doing this for 11 plus years. That was the only really remarkable thing. Last week when on the show, we had three people from CSS. We had Stephanie, Trey, and Beth, and we kind of went through some of the specifics in here. Today, we're going to zoom out and kind of take more of a broader approach. So again, my guests, Jim Hopes and John Henley, are both here to help have this conversation. Let me, first of all, hi, good to see you.
What's up?
Matt. Hey, John, it's good to be here.
Yeah.
Looking forward to this discussion. It's important stuff.
Maybe we'll get lucky and Jim will do a drum solo later. No,
Good. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I know you want to end on time.
We always land the plane on time. That is exactly right. If you are watching this live and you want to ask a question, we do see the questions come up. It's in somewhat real time. If you do have a question or a comment that you want to make, feel free to drop it in the comment box, whether you're on LinkedIn or YouTube watching this. If you're not watching live and you have a question for one of us, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn, and Shay can put up our LinkedIn connections. But it's Jim Hopes at the Center for Sales Strategy and John Henley at the Center for Sales Strategy. We're all very, very easy to find on LinkedIn. All right, so let's jump in. Here they go. The Jim's up there and John's up there. So the overall, and I have my notes because I want to make sure I capture everything. The overall media sales report covers sales department structure, people, compensation. It covers learning and development. It covers sales enablement and setting appointments and sales process. It covers all of it. But what I want to ask the both of you, and Jim, I'll come to you first, and then John as a follow-up. What are a couple of your top takeaways from this year's report?
Well, a couple of things. I looked at the report, a couple of things jumped out at me. One is, if you look at the number of what percentage of the sales team is underperforming when we got the sales managers' responses, I thought it was interesting. In 2019, okay, what percentage of your sales team is underperforming? Less than 20%. That number was 40%, said less than 20% of my sales team is underperforming. Okay. Now in 2020, 46% said less than 20% of my sales team is performing. And in 2021, 51% of the sales managers said less than 20% of my sales team is underperforming. So I looked at that and said, interesting, 10 or 11% difference from 2019 improvement. Fewer of my people, less than 20%, that's the lowest number that you could rate, are underperforming. You think about what happened in 2020 and 2021 and how we sell, how we interact with customers, and how that changed. I know that when we got sent home to various lockdowns that affected cities in various different ways, markets in different ways, managers were uptight. All right, thinking that this is going to really hurt performance and my sales are going to fall apart. The reality is what they're telling us is productivity in some ways has gone up despite all the changes. And I know people are in various situations now. Some people are totally back at the office. Some people are hybrid. Some people not back at the office at all. But considering the monumental change in how we interact with customers and with our managers as salespeople during that period of time, productivity apparently has not suffered. It looks like it's actually gotten a little bit better.
John?
Yeah, so one thing, and Jim's spotlighting that in some way, one thing when you think back to the last couple of years, you see bigger changes in various aspects of this, right? Because we've just gone through two back-to-back years where there's been a lot of change. The one that I locked on to and was thinking about in the last couple of days, Matt, was, well, I'll do it this way, a couple takeaways, one related to sales managers, one related to sales and salespeople. But certainly the standout, and it's spotlighted in the report in a big way, that 53% of managers saying that recruitment's the hardest part of their job. So you think about that 53% number, because I was thinking about several of the markets that I've been interacting with, even in the last couple of weeks. And while, we keep hearing all this, the great resignation, I would say about half the markets that I'm spending a lot of time with have had nobody leave. Right. And so you think about that, they might be in that category, the other 50%. But I would say about half the ones I work with have had 2 or 3 key people leave out of a team of maybe 20 people, where you've got, sales managers and account executives and account managers and all those different folks. And so it's been interesting. I was on a call with a group yesterday where the DOS was almost apologizing to the other managers of how much time they had spent in the last few weeks on things that were building culture. And he said, I know we're all busy. We're trying to lock down the year and we've got all kinds of opportunity in first quarter. And it was interesting. We said, I really feel like these things are important that we're taking time to do. And it was interesting. A couple of the other managers said, you know what, I'm seeing stronger motivation, better activity, better momentum, like all these things they were investing in culture. And this is a place that hasn't lost anybody in the recent time. And so just connecting those pieces that, if you can hold on to all the really good people and you do that through culture and engaging the team, there's a lot of positive things. And if you don't, you're going to find yourself in that camp of, I'm having a really hard time recruiting and replacing really strong people. So that was kind of that one observation, just stringing through some of the things in the report and also just some recent work with clients. The other one was the 82% that say it's harder to get appointments today than 5 years ago. Huge number. Obviously, first thing I think of is you got to really get serious about category approach, your sales enablement tools, account-based marketing. I mean, everything that sales leaders need to be looking at to say, how do we make sure we excel in all these areas, as opposed to just, making sure every salesperson is busy and making lots of calls. You got to look for those, the areas overall across the organization where you can help the team, where the team can get better. So those are two of the takeaways that hit me and kind of connected back to some of those other areas in the report.
Yeah, a few comments on both of your key takeaways, which I think are really astute. One is, Jim, you'll remember we saw this around 2009, 2010. A lot of our clients went through the same experience where sales staffs got smaller, revenue stayed the same or went down. Salespeople made more money, right? Because if you had 12 people billing $20 million and now you have 8 people billing $20 million, well, each person's billing more, they're making more. So sales leadership is saying, hey, we need more. We want to hit $21 million in my example. And salespeople are like, you must be talking to someone else. I'm having a record year, right? And I remember seeing that in several of the stations that we worked with all in this time, because everyone had shrunk down.
Yes.
And so I think that's what we're seeing when a sales manager answers the question of, are my people performing? Well, yeah, look at the numbers. Their year over year is growing. This person's up 14%, 17%. Meanwhile, the station's flat or up 2% or 3%, not back at 19 yet. And John, it's interesting that you bring up the recruitment, the Great Resignation. I was just talking to a manager yesterday that told me in their company, in the last 30 days, they've lost 140 people. Okay. Now, granted, they're a very, very big company and they're not just salespeople, but in the last 30 days, they've lost 140. And we were commenting on how we think that number actually is going to get higher after the holidays, after bonuses are paid, after the first of the year, right? When people say, you know what, now I'm going to make that change. But I had an executive say to me a couple of weeks ago, Matt, we don't have a talent bank problem. We don't have a recruitment problem. We have a retention problem. And we need to stop focusing on, we need to recruit more, we need to recruit more, we need to recruit more. He said, we got to hold on to the people that we have. We have to lean into culture, lean into growing and developing them, and keep them rather than just always focusing on getting new.
Right.
And I thought, that's pretty good, right? I mean, that's a good focus.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the key account strategy in sales, right?
Right. It's like
Reduce your
exactly
turnover.
right, Jim.
Right.
Yeah. Surround your stars. Right.
I'm hoping that several things come from the last several years of experience that we've had. One is I'm hoping that managers are realizing the best way to manage their people, help them be productive, is by looking at the really important metrics, which are not necessarily what time did they come in the morning and how late did they stay at the end of the day, right? I mean, that's kind of a comforting thing. I saw them in here, they were in here for a lot of hours. They seem to be working, so they must be doing a lot of work. All right, that doesn't really tell us much. I'm hoping, and managers then were suddenly forced to do meetings via video connection or even live phone calls, whatever. And so I'm hoping more people looking at, how is my salesperson doing in identifying prospects? Do they really have their target accounts identified? How many of those are they getting a first time meeting with? Okay, that would be a good pipeline measure. All right. And by the way, when they get a first time meeting, what are those discovery meetings going like? Are they getting assignments where the client is excited to see a solution? And what are they doing to solve? And what are they doing to close? And so, and along the way, they can help people. It's less about, did you show up for work today? And more about, let's look at these important measures. That also gives salespeople help and some freedom in their job because, they know how they're doing. If that pipeline is healthy, they know that things are going to look good here in another month or two, or certainly 3. And so it changes. I'm hoping that is a big change that sales managers are able to make. Many of them had to do it because they had no choice. We didn't see our people every day, or maybe for weeks, or maybe for months.
Yeah.
All right. And so, how did we get through that? Did we change in such a way? And they realized that it probably doesn't make sense to make them drive 45 minutes to work, to turn around and drive a half an hour back in the same direction to make their first call. And by the way, I think all this ties into recruitment and selection. When people are leaving companies, what are they seeking? They want more freedom. They want more autonomy about how their time is spent and how they do their jobs. I think this is a great opportunity for those of us in media sales, right? Because we are offering that kind of job, especially if there's a hybrid work environment, and we're measuring according to pipeline and objectives and not time that you do in the office. We can offer, that should be in our recruitment messages.
Absolutely. So I have a question. So this download here is about, I don't know, maybe 15 pages filled with great information. John, coming to you first. If you were a sales leader at a media company, how would you use this report?
Yeah, I think a good way to use this, and most organizations have multiple sales managers, is I would ask each sales manager to read through it and spotlight 2 or 3 things that they think are really important where they'd like to see the organization improve. And just to identify those and really just have a quick conversation with the group and compare notes. And if you were to, if you have 4 or 5 people, or 3 or 4, you get a handful of nominations and try to narrow down to 2 or 3 areas that you want to focus on as an organization. And then I would just come up with some kind of a simple way to look at those. It could be something like, all right, so we want to get better at sales enablement, or we want a better pipeline of candidates for this role right now. It might be something very specific. And then just how you're going to measure progress toward that, or to know when you're going to accomplish it. So look at all that together, narrow it down to a few to work on, figure out what's that best expression of what are we trying to get better at here, and then how are we going to measure that. I think some process like that is how I would approach it.
John, you were sharing with me and a few others yesterday as you're spearheading the project of building out some new leadership courses that will be rolling out next year. And in doing so, you mentioned that you were doing focus groups with really strong leaders over the last few weeks, few months. And that one of the things that came up is that they take the time to think. They take the time to stare out the window and just let their mind go and explore opportunities and possibilities and all of that kind of stuff. I think what you're suggesting is asking everyone to read this and come to a meeting to have a conversation, not very dissimilar than the conversation the 3 of us are having right now, where you're just kind of thinking out loud and exploring the possibilities and thinking about, what does this mean? I mean, those are the traits, some of the traits of really strong leadership.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting when I think back to those conversations, because you're right, Matt. One of the people in one of the groups said, I do more staring out the window. And before, if somebody would have caught me doing that, I would have been like, oh, crap, I got busted. And now I'm like, I'm eager for someone to catch me, to explain what I'm doing. But it was interesting because one of the things that a couple of the folks expressed is that time is really only productive for them if they're in the midst of reading a book, or they just read a blog, or they just listened to a podcast. So like, if I just stare out the window, I might just start thinking about what I want to eat, for dinner, or what I'm going to binge on this weekend. And so this would be a great example of that. Use this as a way to get your wheels turning, to identify some possibilities. And then you can all sit and stare out the window together and make this list. So I love that.
Kind of collaborate. Jim, anything to add to how you might use this?
It's hard to beat that plan. I mean, that was a pretty exhaustive approach, which I think makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's certainly collaborative, having everybody develop a plan and going back and revisiting progress, every, say 30 or 60 days, what are the sequential steps we're going to take, whether it is, how we're managing our people, what we're doing to fill our talent bank, what we're doing to retain our people, what we're doing to build culture, and, turn it into something real. I remember years ago when Nationwide Insurance owned radio stations. They had Nationwide Communications. You know about them, Matt. You do too, John. And so Steve Berger was the president of the company. And he, had a demand for his general managers that they schedule time, in the course of the week where they didn't have anything specific to work on, but kind of that looking out the window to think about the business, about what's happening, what's changing, should we be doing anything different? Are there any threats out there that we need to pay attention to? And, we are in a performance business on the sales end of any of the B2B organizations we work with. There's so much happening. There's a demand to produce numbers. We got that. We all live in that world. But at some point, you do have to think about your business and be strategic and then put a plan to be able to put some of those pieces in action.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Jim, coming at you for this one now. Anything in here that you think, anything in here, when I say here, I mean this, anything in here that you feel is important to call out and pay attention to right now? Like you're a sales leader right now. It's December of 2021. You're trying to finish the year strong, get a quick start to next year. Anything you think you ought to pay attention to?
Yeah, it's hardly something new, but I think I would pay attention to it. Your people can't get in front of prospects often enough. You already know that as a manager. All right. If you have a pipeline, you're checking all of that and helping your individual, but it's a struggle. All right. And so I think that, again, people and managers need to help their people tighten up on some of these things. Where I see, and obviously when we're dealing with, as you know, with sales organizations, this is top of their list. How do we get appointments? We need help in this area. I would drill down on doing two things where I see people struggling is when they just are not personalized enough in their approach. Is it clear? I mean, think about how many emails all of us get every single day about somebody knocking on our door or texts or phone calls or whatever. Is it clear beyond the shadow of a doubt that you know something about me? You know something about my business, about my category, as you mentioned earlier, John, and thinking about what's happening with my business in this category? Do you have observations to share? Is it so apparent that you're different from everybody else? Okay, that would be one thing. If your valid business reason can be used for somebody else, it's not a valid business reason. And so they need help in that area. The second area is, if you look at our survey, you see that people are using phone calls and emails to try to get appointments. What are they not doing often enough? Social media. Are they not doing often enough? Following up, with video. Who's using video? But the people that are using video are having tremendous results. And so there's so much resistance. And so, we teach the don't give up process, all the contacts within a short period of time using various media. Again, when you see people struggling with appointments, they're leaving out the steps. Yeah. And I would pay attention to it because it's so critical. You're going to make your year in the next 120 days. They got to get appointments now.
Yeah, absolutely. John, anything to comment on that, or do you want a question from a viewer?
Sure. Yeah, we got a question. Bring it.
Yeah. So we have a question here. It's from someone says, going back to Matt's retention issue, how do managers balance recruitment efforts with retaining superstar talent? So give us some sage advice on that balance. Common question, right? I mean, how do you balance? I need to be recruiting at the same time. I don't want to be losing anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think you always have to start with the retention. We've used this phrase recently that you want to light a fire inside of your people, not under them. And when you talk about that, generally that looks like, drawing attention to the mission of the organization. Your best people are going to lean into that, making sure that you know how to individually coach and develop them and really have that opportunity to light the fire in them. And you definitely want to pay attention to that with your key people. So I'm always going to think, retention of the stars first. You mentioned earlier somebody you've been interacting with saying, hey, that's really essential here. So that's really going to be step one. And then what I would think about is, how do you take what you're doing to retain stars and figure out a way to socialize that out there on LinkedIn and other places of how you go about creating a great environment for people to be at. And ultimately, for the last several years, there was more about fulfillment. Like if you could spotlight how you make the environment someplace people are going to be fulfilled, that would attract people. And now you've got the two F's. It's the flexibility and fulfillment that people tend to be looking for at this point. So if you can figure out a way to create that for your current stars, you're going to retain them, and then think, all right, given what I'm doing, how do I socialize that and start to use that as a way to draw others in with the kind of flexibility and fulfillment that we offer here? So try to get that virtuous circle going. But those are just a couple thoughts on that.
Are we going to add 2 F's to our acronym library? Is that going to become
2 F's? Right.
2 F's.
2 F's is better than 1.
It's out there now.
I'll piggyback on that real quick, and then I want to get to the last question for both of you. Is that if recruitment becomes just part of the way you do business, and it becomes a habit and becomes a weekly thing, it doesn't get in the way at all. When recruitment really becomes an issue is when you have a dire need, you have 3 openings, and you have to stop doing everything that you're doing to pay attention to recruitment because you don't have a talent bank. And one of the things we've taught at TFM for decades is always be recruiter. You're always filling your talent bank. You're always looking for superstar talent. And if that's the case, then it's not a burden and it doesn't distract you. But so many places when we bring in a new client, one of the first things I'll ask them is, hey, so let me see a copy. Send me over a copy of your recruitment plan so I can see what you do. And it's like crickets, right? We don't have a recruitment plan, Matt. We don't have that much turnover. You still need a recruitment plan, right? You still have to have that. All right, last question for both of you. What's something in this report that could get overlooked, but you think is really important? And it's okay if you've already mentioned it. It's the one last thing that you're leaving everyone with. You don't want to overlook this. Jim, you're up.
Well, I think with people, the culture part, all right, people want to work in a place where they are appreciated, where they have a voice. It's coming out in this report in a big way. And so, John, you were mentioning earlier, one of your managers apologizing for spending time on culture. It's interesting. I understand why he or she said that. But the reality is we should all be spending more time on culture. I just heard a story the other day, an interview with one of the players with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And, he said, one of the things I love about being on this team, he said, we all talk to each other about everything. We share issues, we're like a family, and we talk with our coaches, and, we feel like we're part of what we do here. And by the way, I'm sure it's the same way with the Dallas Cowboys, but I'm just telling you, it helps to make for a winning
Absolutely.
team. Yeah.
Yeah. John?
Yeah, and I think connecting to that, Matt, the whole idea of learning and development, because sometimes when you do start to talk, we've done it internally and with clients where they say, okay, I want to have a better culture. I want to have a more engaged team. What does that mean? Yes, I should connect with them directly and interact, but what else can I do? And we keep seeing this coming up more and more, the learning and development. The stat was 91%. It's a really high number. Salespeople want more learning and development. So it's a great kind of starting point. If you aspire to have a better culture and a more engaged team, start with learning and development.
Yeah, and I'll finish this up with something that I think, and I'll make it as a bold prediction. Okay, bold prediction that the media companies that win with revenue in the future will put more focus and more emphasis on a lead generation and account-based marketing strategy. They will solve the problem of, we need to get our salespeople to have more quality appointments. They will work hard to solve that problem. And I know all the salespeople watching are like cheering as I say this, but we will solve that problem and spend time and resources to make that happen. And it'll be a revenue win in the long run. Mm. With that, I want to say thank you to Jim and John for attending. If you want to get a hold of Jim, you can connect with him on LinkedIn. You can continue the conversation there. And if you want to get a hold of John, you can also reach him on LinkedIn and continue this conversation. And of course, if anyone wants to get a hold of me, that's my LinkedIn profile or my LinkedIn address. Feel free to reach out. Thank you so much for your time. We enjoyed spending time with you. Download the Media Sales Report. If you're watching on YouTube and you like what you've seen, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, give us a thumbs up. We appreciate all of you. Have a great day.
See everybody.
I've been told that the fire's old, and when stars are in